before you start creating a workforce around your business, before you start putting in a lot of money and raising capital, make sure people really, really want your product. I can't do what the big guys can, but the big guys cannot do what I'm doing either. So that's your strength, because big pharmaceutical companies or big supplement companies that are hundreds of millions of dollars worth, they can't write each customer a note. They can't follow up with each customer. They're too big. They have way too many customers. I had only 500 customers. I mean, I have enough time in my day to do it. Small businesses they do everything. They're everywhere. They're on YouTube, they're on SoundCloud, they're on Boom Podcasting. There's no reason why you should do all of that. So find an advertising channel that you can reach as efficiently as possible for every dollar spent.
And that's next on Bootstrapping Your Dreams show. So, the big question is this: how are ambitious people like us, who don't have a lot of resources, did not go to Ivy League colleges, were not born into wealth, how do we become resourceful enough, use our creativity, our dedication, and a little bit of crazy to bootstrap our way to realizing our dreams? Whether it is launching a new company, launching a new app, or making it to the top of the corporate ladder? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Hey listeners and viewers, we have created a tremendous community of bootstrappers, entrepreneurs, and professionals who are ambitious, resourceful, and want to get things done. We brainstorm, support, and help each other out. Come join us. Navigate to bootstrapping.group. That is bootstrapping.group. If you like this video, do not forget to hit that like button now. Or if you want us to improve our content, go ahead and hit the thumbs down button and give us your feedback in the comment section below. Here at Tetranoodle, we are passionate about entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation. Every week, we bring you insightful and engaging interviews, tips, tricks, and strategies to help you grow your business or rise in your corporate profession. So if you're new here, please consider subscribing. And do not forget to hit that bell icon so that you are notified when we publish new content. Hello and welcome to this new episode of Bootstrapping Your Dreams show. Today we'll be talking with Prady Tewarie, and Prady is 28 years old, and he has founded, at the age of 28, he founded and sold more than 24 businesses, all while getting his doctorate degree and competing as a professional bodybuilder. He's currently the CEO of Aggarwal and the Tewarie Group with over $100 million in real estate holdings. Prady is on a mission to teach entrepreneurs to see the opportunities that are all around them, and that they don't need huge amounts of capital and investors before they set about changing the world. And most importantly, that they can be considered a success and inspiration no matter how small they might be. So welcome, Tewarie. We are so glad to have you here.
Hey man, thanks so much for having me on the show. I'm super excited. And whenever I get an opportunity or a platform to speak or share about my story, the goal that I really have is not really to delve into my story or, get into specifics and kind of a biography. I really want to make sure that when I, explain things that I've done and concepts, I hope that people can take some principles and concepts away so they can apply it in their lives. So anyone that's listening in or tuned in and is looking for some tips that it can apply in their life, that's my goal today. So after you listen to the podcast, I'll feel like it's a success when people feel like they got some real value that they can apply to their life. Because oftentimes when we speak about our own lives, it doesn't transfer to other people's lives. So I'll want to make sure that I give some really valuable information to people listening in.
That's great. Thank you so much. Just so that we can get to know you better, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started? You have a very interesting background. You have a law degree and you're a bodybuilder and real estate investor. So tell us how this all came to be.
Yeah, it's kind of it's an intricate story, but to kind of summarize it, I moved to the States back when I was a teenager, right before I went to college. And, kind of entrepreneurship, people ask, well, was it your plan to become an entrepreneur or to start businesses? Not really. A lot of us start with a bird's eye view of a long-term plan. I did not. I kind of, my first kind of foray into entrepreneurship was to just listen to people and just hearing that there was a problem that someone had and I wanted to solve it. A very small problem. And at that time I was in college. I was really into working out, health and fitness. And I know a group of kids were saying, hey, like I want to get all these supplements, but it's where do I get them from? Because I don't have a car to go to GNC. And, Amazon wasn't really that big on Amazon Prime back in the days. This was 2009 and 10. They were just getting kind of started. But most people need their supplements. They need them right now. Like when someone needs protein, they need it right now. And I kept hearing this over and over again. So people at college would like carpool and like go to GNC just to pick their supplements up. And I thought that was interesting. So I was like, maybe I can solve it. So I called up a manufacturer, distributor, and I was like, hey, you have all these cool brands. I want to buy all these in bulk. And they were like, who are you? Do you have a store? I was like, no, but I want to start one. And I don't know, one or the other way, I convinced them to send me a lot of inventory at net 30, which is you pay 30 days after. And in my dorm room, I had all these supplements, basically stacked everywhere. And I put up a website, and instead of like a 2-day delivery that most websites offered, I offered a 20-minute delivery that I would deliver their stuff to people on campus on a bike. So people would order on my website. It was a really poorly designed website, not a nice website at all. But people could order, and they would pay a premium for quick delivery. And I kind of figured that out. And I wanted to kind of test the market, though, because a lot of people, when they say they have a problem, a lot of us have problems, but the question is, how big is the problem and how much will you pay to solve that problem, right? Every entrepreneur needs to really understand that. So I recognized early on that people would really pay a lot for a quick delivery, where it's a point where people pay 100% of the entire price of something just to get it in like 10, 20 minutes. And I saw a huge opportunity there. Long story short, that was my first foray into entrepreneurship. I had scaled it so much that I had so many students on campus riding their bike and delivering all this stuff. We had scaled it. We brought it to 3-4 other schools, and I ended up selling my stake in it. Now, the story here, though, is that this wasn't a multinational business or anything like that with like hundreds of employees. This was a small business that I'd started with an idea. I tested it. We were profitable. I was paying people. And the story of you having a business, founding one, and then providing value to people, and then selling the business, that alone was showing a lot of competency. So people on campus here in Boston, where I went to school, they heard that story, and then they started bringing me their ideas. Like, oh, Prady knows what he's doing in business. Let me approach him for my business ideas. And that's how I got totally involved into entrepreneurship. Honestly, man, it wasn't like I want to be an entrepreneur. That wasn't like my long-term goal ever. I never thought about it. I'm from Europe, and there we don't really have entrepreneurship and startup. It's not a big thing. But I just listened to someone's problem. I was like, I want to try to solve it. And at that point, I was like, what do I lose? If it goes wrong, I'm not losing much capital. It's going to be fine. And it worked out, and I was competent at what I did, and that started the story, and that's how I got involved into entrepreneurship. And everything else kind of came from that first success.
That's great. So it's basically, you were aware of all the things that are happening in your environment. You're keeping an open mind and just looking for these opportunities where other people miss it, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's, I think great entrepreneurs, people always ask, man, where can I find an idea? I want to find the next idea. Where should I go? Where should I look? And the ideas are from people that you're close with. They'll tell you their problems every day. Like people tell you their problems. Your friends will tell you their problems. Your parents will tell you their problems. But a lot of people, hear, some people listen, but listening is not enough. I mean, I can pay a therapist $200, $300 an hour and he'll listen to me, but that's not enough. I think where the difference between entrepreneurs and maybe people that just listen are good friends is entrepreneurs, they deeply care. And that's a difference between listening and caring. You care so much that you want to stop everything you're doing and try to really provide a solution for them instead of just saying, okay, I'm just listening to you. Because a lot of people say, well, I listen to my friends all the time. I was like, dude, that's not enough. So I took it to the next level where I'm constantly listening, and I do that still today. I actually, I go on Instagram, I go on YouTube and Reddit, and I don't really watch the content. I read comments all the time, and I'm seeing what are people's problems. What are they saying about each video? I do that a lot. I go through hundreds of comments each day, not on my videos, and other people's videos, and I see what their concerns are, and you really start caring about the problem. And I think that's taken it to the next level because people will tell you their problems all the time. Yeah. We just got to listen, and then we got to care.
Great. All right. So you recommend that, people can get started with entrepreneurship even when they are in college or they are, they have a 9-to-5 job. And we are all about bootstrapping here on this podcast as well. So tell us a little bit about, what are the first steps that one can take to start their business?
Yeah, the absolute first step is about making sure that you have an idea that people care about. And this sounds so simple to think about it, but I call this, which I call the product to market pull, which means that people really need your product or service. And here's something that I'll say that maybe isn't very popular in the entrepreneurial community. And as an entrepreneur, I'll admit this. I don't think that new businesses should exist. I really don't. I think existing businesses are better equipped to solve problems. They can fail. They have more resources. They have more time. They have more manpower. So new businesses shouldn't really exist. The only reason why new business should exist is because they can do something so novel and they can provide such value to their marketplace that no one else can provide it. So I think the first thing, and that was the example that I just gave with my first business, I need to make sure that people really, really need this. And, I think what startups do nowadays, they're like, okay, I have an idea. Now I got to build, an entire workforce around it. And now I got to raise money. But the real issue is, though, when sometimes people come to me now with their business ideas, and I was like, man, do you really have a money problem, or do you have a creativity problem? Because I think a lot of new businesses, they don't have a money problem. They just haven't validated their idea yet. So I think before you start creating a workforce around your business, before you start putting in a lot of money and raising capital, make sure people really, really want your product. And sounds super intuitive, man, but people listening maybe to the show, or a lot of people nowadays are realizing, dude, I don't like my life, man. I don't like the 9 to 5. I'm not a good employee. I want to do something else with my life. I want to be the master of my own ship, of my own life. And they're like, okay, so let me start a business. But I've always said, starting a business for the sake of starting one is a really odd thing to do. You should never do that. You should start a business because you are bringing a product to the marketplace that people really want. So the fact that we don't care about a lot of the founders when we listen to their interviews and Y Combinator and a lot of seminars, we are not listening to them because their stories are so unique. We're listening to them because they provided so much value, and then their stories are unique. So the rags to riches stories is only interesting to us when someone has gone to the rags and then the riches, right? So you have to provide value to people. And this is the biggest thing I've seen all the time. I think people but bootstrapping comes into place. All my businesses, I think almost all of them, up until recently, never raised any capital for all of them. My recent business that I have right now, Azith, which is a nootropic company, I started with $5,500, and I've never put in any other of my own money, neither borrowed money, no VC, nothing. Is because I built a product and I made sure that people really wanted it, and I made sure that the people that really wanted it were going to pay enough money that the business was going to be sustainable. Otherwise, I'm always like, my business doesn't need to be around. Another company can do it, and then I just don't do it. So that's the first thing. Make sure you validate your idea.
Yeah, that's well said for sure. Now you brought in what is the term?
It's a nootropic. Mm-hmm.
Nootropics. Okay, So tell us a little bit about that. That's a very fascinating area that you are venturing into.
Yeah, so basically the nootropic segment kind of started like 4 or 5 years ago. There was a movie that came out, Limitless, that a lot of people have watched, with Bradley Cooper, and the concept of nootropics really are that the way I see it, it's basically a lot of things that caffeine and energy drinks are supposed to do without a lot of the side effects. And there's a huge market for that, right? So I started getting involved in it because I was in law school. I was growing several businesses. And I think at one point I was like, man, I can't do everything really well. I got to choose. And I was also competing in bodybuilding. So I would start using a lot of stimulants and pre-workouts and energy drinks, but I would continuously crash. So I went online and I found out about this. I was reading about a lot of biohacking stuff. So how can you hack your body for more productivity? I was experimenting, and I heard about something called nootropics, and it was interesting. These were a class of ingredients that the Russians were using in the Cold War during the space race to beat the Americans. So they would give it to their astronauts and their military personnel. And I read that and I was like, man, I got to get my hands on this. Like, what is this? This is awesome. So I would order a lot of the raws. I went to BU, and I was a research facility, and when my buddy worked at the chem lab, and we would put them together, and I was taking these nootropics, different blends, and I think it was like 100 or 200 tries in. And I remember one time I was going to the gym with my friend. We had taken this 200 version, and we're driving to the gym, and my friend, who's a big dude, he starts like, I turn around because I hear him crying, and I was like, dude, are you okay? Like, what's going on? I was like, oh man, I don't know what I gave you that you were getting this emotional reaction. I felt bad. But then he was like, Prady, I got to tell you something, man. Whatever we just took, I feel so good right now. I feel like I've never felt like this before. I feel like I've had the best night's rest. I just feel so good. It's making me emotional. And I was like, man, I think we're finally onto something. So long story short, we did a little more iterations, and then a product was born, which is called Azith. But again, I didn't want to sell this to anyone. There was no business around this. I was using it for myself. But long story short, I was in school and people heard that I was taking something that I was building with my friend, and they're like, Prady, I need some of this. Can you hook me up? Can you give me some of it? I was like, okay, you want to try it out? And man, I think I gave it to, like, I don't know how many of these bottles and capsules I was giving away. And at some point I was like, I think there's a real market for it. Again, what I was telling you earlier, you need to make sure there's a need for this. And I started realizing there's a real market for this. It's caffeine free. There's no crash. It builds up super slowly. And it makes people feel really good. And so long story short, I created a business around it, and now we're selling worldwide. Of course, we're not making this in a chem lab anymore. There's a real manufacturer, there's compliance and everything. But the idea here is that I saw an opportunity. I was using it for myself. There was a lot of word of mouth. There was a strong product to market pull. I had customers that already wanted to buy before I went into create the product, and then the product scaled and we went worldwide right now. So
great. Awesome story. Now, getting into this type of field, you face a lot of competition, stiff competition from large pharmaceutical companies and whatnot. So how did you take on that challenge? Did that scare you at all? Getting approval, compliance, health, safety, and all that stuff?
Yeah, so it is a lot of work. Like initially, I would say, like, with any type of industry you get in, you have to understand like the regulation laws. What are the barriers to entry? And one of them is compliance for sure. One of the concepts that I always have, and I speak about quite openly, is that I'm not a huge proponent of competition. I don't believe. I mean, you got to do your market research, but I believe that if you're a small business and a small startup, if you're going to play the competing game, you're going to lose, because the existing companies, like if I'm coming with a business right now and say I've put in $5,500 and started a business, and I have a product and I'm potentially competing with a pharmaceutical company that has billions of dollars of funding, I will get crushed. Like, I'm not even going to try to poke at them because they'll just completely annihilate me. So I think this is a big mistake that a lot of startups do. Do not compete. Just don't. So I started thinking about, okay, what can I do differently that the big companies cannot? Like, how can I be unique in my space? And one of the things I started doing early on is people would buy my product, and I was heavily focused on the post-purchase. So a lot of times when you buy a product, everyone's nice to you. You go in a store, hey, what do you want to drink? Let me show you around. Let me show you the showroom. And then once you leave, what happens? They don't care about you anymore. It's over. So what I did differently, I was only concerned with getting 500 people to buy my product. And I spent a massive amount of time and effort into the post-purchase, which means that after they've bought the product, how was I treating them? And I would nurture them. I would send handwritten notes. I would remember when their birthdays were. I would send them text messages. I mean, I went all out on those 500 customers. And guess what happened? Those 500 customers told other people, and then they told other people, and they told other people. So one of the things that I was uniquely good at was that I was small. And a lot of small companies think, man, I'm so small, I can't compete against the big guys. And I would always tell them, yes, you're small. You cannot compete against the big guys. I couldn't compete against the big guys because I can't do what the big guys can. But the big guys cannot do what I'm doing either. So that's your strength, because big pharmaceutical companies or big supplement companies that are hundreds of millions of dollars worth, they can't write each customer a note. They can't follow up with each customer. They're too big. They have way too many customers. I had only 500 customers. I mean, I have enough time in my day to do it. So I was doing the things that I'm uniquely good at. So that was the first thing. And now what we're doing pretty heavily is that we've built a community around our product. So whenever people use a product, people always like, man, I want to talk about the product, but they don't know where to go. So we built a community. So we have a forum, we have a Facebook group, and we go all out with them. We have one-on-one accountability. We have book clubs, everything around the product. And you don't have to pay for it extra. It's all included. So this is something that only we offer. So there's many supplement companies. There's many nootropic companies. But if you're looking for a nootropic company with a community around it, there's only one. There's only us. So there's no competition for us because we're the only one doing what we do. So that's been my philosophy. Yes, it's going to be tough. You're going to compete, but don't get bogged down by your competition because you're going to lose. It's your writing is on the wall, you know?
Yeah, that's great. So now, do you think that these type of tactics, falling in love with your customers and giving them this special attention is transferable to other types of businesses, other types of startups as well?
Yeah, it's a big part. I think you need to recognize like what are customers craving these days. And I've just noticed that a lot of customers, we've gone heavy into tech. And there was a time period, 10, 15 years ago where we want everything automated, like IoT. And still IoT is huge and we want everything automated and everyone wants just machine. But I think if you look at the last 3-4 years, even what's going on in the congressional hearings with like Facebook and big tech, people are saying, I don't want to give all my data, man. I feel a little bit, I'm not sure how I feel about it. People are questioning it now. Whereas 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, people are like, oh no, take everything. I just want to be part of this technological marvel. So there is a trend right now going on, and I hear about it a lot, where customers want a community and they want to have more in-person conversations with brands, and brands are now investing too in the community aspect of it. I don't know if people have noticed, but Facebook just came out with a white paper. They said that they're going to focus on 2 things more heavily. They're going to focus on Facebook events and Facebook groups. That's going to be their main focus right now. And that's because people are craving the community aspect. So I think it is transferable for other businesses. A personal touch is what a lot of customers really want. That's one thing that's transferable. And the other thing that's transferable by what I said is, if you're right now thinking about starting a business, bootstrapping it, don't be concerned. Don't feel overwhelmed. Don't feel intimidated. Just play your game, and you're going to win at playing your game. Don't play the game of like Microsoft or Facebook or any of your competitors, because you're going to lose that game. It's not a game that you can play. So those 2 things I would say, those are really transferable for anyone listening to this podcast right now.
Great. All right. So, you've had tremendous amount of success, but along the way, you must have made some mistakes, I'm assuming. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the mistakes that stand out and the lessons you learned from it?
Yeah, I think one big mistake, and this is something that's still tough. I still catch myself sometimes. You always have to worry about this, plus other entrepreneurs, is not being very good at delegating and scaling. People know me that I'm someone who talks a lot about scaling businesses. How do you scale? That's all I think about. But what's the biggest issue? Why don't we scale? And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, we don't scale is because we're afraid to delegate, right? Why are we afraid to delegate? Let's think about the conversations you hear a lot of entrepreneurs have, or I've had. It's like, with my friends, and they're like, Prady, what's going on? You feel down today? I was like, man, you know what? I'm trying to hire people for my business, but everyone I hire, they don't work hard, man. They're lazy. They don't work as hard as I do. They can't do it. I feel like I'm giving something away, but then I have to do it myself. I just hate it. And the question that you have to ask yourself, and when I hear other entrepreneurs say this, is that is everyone in the world so lazy, or are you just a bad entrepreneur who isn't willing to delegate? This goes back to like parenting, right? If your parents are helicopter parents, they will let you do things, but they're always watching over you. What happens to the child? The child may grow up, but is never truly independent. So it's almost like a cycle where the parent is like, well, I got to take care of my kid, because if I leave him or her to herself, they won't be able to thrive. And the kid is like, well, I don't need to do anything because my parents are always going to be there for me. So you have this interdependent relationship. And I think this happens a lot with startups. I had this happen in the beginning a little bit because I was really good at what I do. Like, I'm very good at sales. I'm very good at marketing. I'm really good at branding. I've prided myself with it. But at some point, I only have 24 hours in a day. So I need to scale. I need to hire employees. But when I was bringing other people in, I was giving them some tasks to do. But at the end of the day, I would just be like, no, let me just do it. And I would take it over and do their job. And I was recognizing that I was putting more hours in my business, but my business wasn't growing proportionally. And I had to do an inventory. Why is this the case? And it's because even though I was bringing in employees and paying them, I was still doing all their work pretty much, right? And this was a hard lesson for me to learn. There's a story that I would like to share, which is a story which I learned from a lot, and I got some failure from it. It was one of my first few businesses after the supplement business. I had scaled this business. It was profitable, doing really well. And I had an offer that someone wanted to buy the business. We were talking back and forth. We had a number that seemed to work. And then, anyone that has kind of sold their business, a small business or any type of business, you have a due diligence phase where they're going to check your books and they're going to come to your office and check everything out, how everything's running. And I remember this was the last phase though. They come to our office or headquarters, and at the end of this kind of the due diligence phase, the partner comes up to me and is like, Prady, I'm sorry, man, I don't think we can do this anymore. I was like, sorry, what do you mean? Why can't we do this? He's like, Prady, I got to be honest. I have a problem. And I was like, man, what problem do you have? Tell me. And he's like, my problem is that you're here. And I was like, what do you mean I'm here? Like, what are you talking about? And what he was trying to say is that every part of this business, I was the one telling them what's going on and what to do. And I've told this story a few times, but every time I tell myself this, it's like a learning lesson for me. And I didn't recognize, because I took a lot of pride in the fact that I was spending hundreds of hours and working really hard, and everyone must do that. It's a lot of hard work, but you have to ask yourself, are you getting in the way of your own business and your own success? And you are, by not willing to let go and by micromanaging all the time. Because what the partner was telling me, he was telling me, Prady, if I buy your business, we don't know how anything works because you're doing everything. And so there's no process in place. There's no system in place. You're the system. You're the process. You are doing everything. Even though you have all these employees, you're literally doing everything. And I remember they actually ended up buying a company which was barely doing six figures. Was doing like way less than we did, way less profitable, but they had systems in place and they let our company, they didn't buy our company that was doing way better. And we never ended up selling that company. And that was that was one of my first failures. And I got in my own way because I wouldn't delegate. So the big lesson here for a lot of entrepreneurs is learn to let go. And I have a system that if someone can do the job 60 to 75% as good as I can, I delegate it. And in the beginning, people are not going to be great. You have to let them. You have to keep them and keep training. Right now, if I have an employee and they're not doing a good job because they're not learning as quick as possible, I don't say, oh man, don't worry about it. I'll do it. No, I'll say, okay, I'm going to teach you. And I stay at it and I keep teaching them until they can, because that allows me then to scale. So that was my first, a really big failure, like a lesson of failure that I think stays with me today. And I think a lot of your listeners would really benefit hearing from.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I think it resonates because I went through similar challenges. And, as an entrepreneur, you are treating your business as a baby. And obviously you think that, nobody else can do the job as good as you can. But I think, you're right. It's a mistake. It's in order to scale, you need to let go. Now, you also talked about sales, marketing, branding, and these are very important aspects of building and growing a business. So can you tell us a little bit about, what are some of the insights that you can share on how to bootstrap a company and grow it using these skills that you have, and maybe also some of the mistakes that you have noticed other people make in these areas?
Yeah, I think the one thing that, there's different things in quote unquote we call marketing. There's branding, there's advertising, there's marketing. My focus always has been branding, building a brand, right? So there's some really good influencers in the space that I recommend people listen to. One of them is Seth Godin. I think he does a really good job talking about branding in a very abstract way. But one of the things I think we should all focus on heavily in the beginning is don't get caught up in chasing all these rabbits. Like, it's too much. Like, there's Instagram, then there's Facebook, then there's email marketing, then there's LinkedIn, there's lives. When you have a business and you want to put your word out there, first of all, you got to promote yourself. Absolutely true. But in the beginning, when you're bootstrapping, this is your audience, bootstrap. You don't putting in only your own funds or very little funds. You should only do the things that you're really good at. Don't do it. If you're a good writer, write newsletters. People ask me, Prady, what platform should I use? Should I use Snapchat? Should I use Facebook? I was like, what can you do? Are you good at video? Do you like to have a camera in front of you and talk? Then do that. If you like to write, then do newsletters. So find out. Don't think, oh, other brands are doing YouTube, so I got to do YouTube. I think the biggest mistakes I see small businesses do, they do everything. They're everywhere. They're on YouTube. They're on SoundCloud. They're on Boom Podcasting. There's no reason why you should do all of that. So find an advertising channel that you can reach as efficiently as possible for every dollar spent. And that answer is going to be different for every entrepreneur. And that's the real question that you need to ask yourself. For every dollar I spent, how much can I make? And which platform is going to allow me to do that? And the answer to that is, if you're bootstrapped, is what can you do? So for me, for instance, I like to speak. So I was investing a lot in podcasting because I like to speak. And I think that, I know maybe writing isn't really my thing, but maybe speaking is. So I'm going to focus on that. So that's the first thing. The second thing in branding and marketing that I think is really important, I have this test now with brands. I go on their Facebook, or mostly I'm heavily in Instagram. I cover their handle. I cover their Instagram handle. And I try to see if I know which company it is. And most of the time, the answer is no. They all are interchangeable. Like, for instance, I'm in fitness, and every fitness supplement company has like photos of girls and models and maybe something of like someone lifting. There's no uniqueness. So you have to ask yourself, what am I doing each day? What content am I pushing out that I'm so good that people will miss me when I'm gone? It sounds cliche, but will people miss you when you're gone? If the answer is no, you're not really building a brand, you're building a commodity. Branding and advertising and stuff are different. Advertising is to get quick sales. Branding is staying power. You want to build a legacy. Do you want to create an empire of a business that's there for a long time? You need to create a brand. So when people say the name of your company, what's the first thing that comes in mind, right? So a great example is like one of the brands that's a brand, you might not like it or not, like IKEA. IKEA, like if I think of IKEA building a hotel, I know what the hotel is going to look like because I know IKEA has a brand. But if I want to say Marriott or Radisson is going to create a shoe or a clothing line, I don't know what it's going to look like because they don't really have a brand. those hotels compete on price. So they're more commodity based. Now, does it mean you're not going to be successful if you don't have a brand? No. Of course, you can still be successful. But if you really want staying power, if you want to really sell your business down the line, you have more value in your business, you need to have a brand with it, because then you're not only selling your profitability and your cash flow, you're also selling the brand equity that you've built. And in today's world where data is so huge, that is a big part of it. Right now, I create cash flow, so I make sure my business is profitable, but I also make sure I have a brand, because when a private equity firm is coming to me and wants to acquire my company, you'd be surprised how few of them are actually really interested in my cash flow, and how much more of them, they're interested in my data, but they're also interested in the brand that I've built. That's really where they see the value. And so every day when I'm posting content, when I'm writing a newsletter, when I'm writing an article, I'm thinking, how am I different than everyone else? And how am I so remarkable that you can't miss me? And that's what I try to build every day. And that's what I tell all entrepreneurs. So watch out that you're not trading commodities. Make sure that you're actually building a brand. There's totally different ball game. And you need to be honest with yourself. Are you building a side hustle? Are you trying to buy cash flow and just bring extra income? Or are you trying to create a company, an enterprise that you can sell or scale or acquire other companies? And that's a whole different ball game. If the latter is the case, if you want to sell or acquire, then branding, I think, is so key in today's world. It will just increase the value of your own company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's for sure. All right, great. Now, is there anything else that you may want to share about entrepreneurship, how to bootstrap a company, that I haven't asked already?
No, I think that people need to, I think one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself as an entrepreneur is to bootstrap. It's a great gift because it brings out the best in you. It brings out your creativity. So I actually think don't flood your enterprise with cash, even if you can raise a small round. I mean, just try to do the bare minimum. I know a lot of times we talk about scaling quickly, and I think there's definite merit to that. But I think a lot of times, and we're seeing it right now, even a lot of companies are having an IPO and they're going to the market, they're struggling a little bit, even though their valuation is high. Of course, I'm talking about on a macro level, but because a lot of their business problems and inefficiencies have been covered up by flooding it with cash. So I think I believe I have gained a lot of, I can speak to you about these things because I had to do it myself. I had to create Instagram posts myself. I had to create videos by myself. I had to actually deliver product by myself. I went to the post office. I fired people. I've hired people. I've done all that stuff already. So I'm much more valuable today than I would have been if I had raised $5 million for my company and just hired a sales force. And then I was like just forcing my product down people's throats, which you can do today. I don't think I would have been a good entrepreneur. And I value the fact that I'm a great entrepreneur today, because right now when I build companies or when people ask me for assistance, I think I'm much more equipped to do that than I personally would have been if I just had raised a bunch of money. So I think you should really celebrate the fact that you have an opportunity to create a company and you have enough money just to bootstrap and find your way, because you'll really find your entrepreneurial spirit. That's one thing. You become a better entrepreneur. But the other thing, the third thing, which is really important, I want to talk about too, maybe entrepreneurship isn't something that you want to do in your life. And the reason why I say that is because we always have fads. I grew up in an Indian family, and for us, it's like becoming a doctor and an engineer and all that stuff. And that's it's like a brand, it's like a fashion statement to do those things, right? And then we had in this country, you become astronaut, you become a doctor, lawyer. And then today, in today's age, and since 2008 or 9 or 10, it's to become an entrepreneur. That's the fashionable thing to do. And I think a lot of younger people, they're like, I don't know what to do in my life, so I'll just become an entrepreneur. But entrepreneurship is very difficult. It's a lot of responsibility. And you need to make sure that you really want to dedicate your life to it. And find out that this is really what you want to do. So sometimes it's good when you're bootstrapping your way, you can kind of find out, hey man, is this really for me? And that's my big takeaway. You're not a failure if you're not an entrepreneur. There's very successful people that are doctors and attorneys and athletes that are doing really well. They're contributing a lot, but they're not entrepreneurs. So I think a lot of people if I'm a successful person, I must be an entrepreneur today, especially in my generation. That's a huge thing. And I was like, no, man, you can be successful doing so many things. It's a lot of responsibility, especially if you're young. I know one of my first businesses that I scaled, all of a sudden, me and my friend, we started it in a Panera Bread. We were talking, and then we started a business. And then it was like a year later, we started having people and we're paying their salaries. I didn't realize what I was doing. And I remember one day someone came into our office like, hey, Prady, I got to talk to you. And I was like, oh yeah, what's going on? He's like, I just want to thank you because of you, I was able to send my daughter to college this semester. And I was like, sorry. And I was like, I was like, oh, for sure. Don't worry about it, man. And I closed the door and I went to my co-founder. I was like, man, what have we just done? Like, I didn't realize that now I'm responsible for pay people's mortgages. I'm responsible for their medical, for their dental. So when you're kind of by yourself, like as a young person, especially like myself, I can't even take care of myself properly. Now you have to take care of all these other people. So make sure you understand that this is about creating jobs. It's creating about opportunity, but also being caring for those people. And they really rely on you. Those people have their mortgages, their family security, everything on the line to make sure that you're doing a good job. So I know at that point when I had that conversation with him, I was in my early 20s and I stopped being a 20-year-old. I couldn't, because now I had to become like, I was mature all of a sudden. I couldn't have fun and go out on the weekends because I'm like, man, people are really relying on me. So so this is not for everyone though. You need to ask yourself whether this is something you want to do. So I guess to summarize, to give an answer to your question, is bootstrapping is great. It allows you to become a better entrepreneur, but it also allows you to see whether this is really for you.
That's great. Yeah, thanks a lot for that advice. And on that note, let's end the interview. Now, before I let you go, can you tell us how people can reach out to you? Maybe your company URL?
Yeah, absolutely. If people want to reach out to me, the best way to do that is they can go either on Facebook or on Instagram. I'm mostly I check both, but I'm mostly active on Instagram. You can look me up if you go in the search bar and you put in Prady Tewarie, so Prady, last name is Tewarie, Tewarie. You'll see my Instagram handle. Definitely hit me up there and send me a note. I'll respond to all direct messages. I literally try to respond to as many as I can. And anything people have questions on about scaling a business, how to really get started, I'm more than happy to answer. People are interested in trying out the nootropic that I have. You can go to getazos.com. And you'll see a chat bot there. If you leave a message, I usually see it. And if you want to order a bottle, you can actually order a bottle. And if you put in a code called Bootstrap, which we created for the show, you will actually get a really big discount basically on me, the bottle. So feel free to use that. So go to checkout and just put in Bootstrap, and then you will be all set.
Great. Thank you so much for your generosity. Thank you. And, sharing a lot of valuable information. Everybody in the audience must have gotten a lot of value out of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you providing the platform, man. It was amazing. Thank you.
And that's all for now. Until next time. And if you're an existing or an aspiring tech entrepreneur, then I invite you to check out my new online workshop, Bootstrapping Your Tech Startup Dreams. Go to bootstraptechstartup.com and sign up for free. I want to make sure that more successful and sound decisions are made every day in your tech projects. Let's start finding solutions to your problems. So go to bootstraptechstartup.com and I look forward to helping you with your tech projects. If you want more engaging videos and insightful interviews with industry's thought leaders, then check out other videos we have picked for you. The link is right there. And if you want to be notified about our new content, please do consider subscribing to our channel.